I recently had the opportunity to visit Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando for my very first time. I went with a few friends and we had an absolute blast. We did all 10 houses without Express. And if you want to see how I did that and how you can too, I have a link down in the description, so go ahead and check that out. But that's not what this video is about. Today, I want to rank every single house at the event from worst to best. And before I get into it, please like, comment, subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And lastly, take these rankings with a grain of salt. I only got one run through each of these houses, so this list is purely based on that one experience. It is very possible that I got a really bad run on the houses I rated lower and a really good run on the ones I ranked higher. That's just how it goes with these events. Anyways, without further ado, starting at the very bottom of the list, at number 10, I have Dolls Let's Play Dead. And let me be clear, I genuinely enjoyed every single house at this year's event, except for this one. And I don't think that it's necessarily because it was a poorly made house. I honestly just think that it was set up for failure for me personally. The concept right from the start was the least interesting one out of the entire lineup. Basically, the idea is that you are shrunken down into a dollhouse that belongs to a girl that is not very nice to her toys. It's not literally Sid's room from Toy Story. Obviously, Universal doesn't own that, but that's the vibe. Broken toys, unsettling dolls, twisted playthings, and for whatever reason, I just have no interest in that concept going in. And unfortunately, the execution did not win me over. This was the only house at the entire event that didn't manage to get a single scare out of me. And trust me, I'm a very jumpy person. Every other house got me multiple times. This one didn't really even come close. Most of the performers weren't even monsters. They were like the victims of this little girl. So the tone leaned more unsettling than scary. And the costumes, they all kind of blended together for me. A lot of dolls started to feel the same. And while the sets weren't bad, they just weren't significantly impressive compared to literally everything else at the event. I've walked through Toy Story Land at Disney, so the whole you're the size of a toy aesthetic isn't really fresh to me, and even the smells in this house kind of turned me off. And I know it's a nitpick, but they just added another layer of unpleasantness for me. Now, it wasn't all bad, obviously. I'll give credit where it's due. I did like the facade. I appreciated that they tried to get creative with certain rooms, like the oven scene and the interactive buttons where you could basically interact with the actual house itself and change what's going on. But overall, the house just wasn't for me. I know some people loved it, but for me personally, Dolls Let's Play Dead is an easy skip. Next up, let's talk about Jason Universe at number 9. I know a lot of people are calling this one the scariest house at the event, but honestly, I did not feel that way. Maybe I just got a weird run through, but for me, it just did not hit as hard as most people made it seem. Don't get me wrong, the jump scares from Jason were relentless. He's coming at you from every single angle, and I definitely jumped a few times, but after a while, it all started to feel pretty repetitive. It's just Jason, and then more Jason, and then yet another Jason. Mostly, it was the new Jason Universe design, but it does sprinkle in some of the classic designs as well, which I did like. The house is basically split into two halves. The first kind of leans more into the scenery and the set pieces with the atmosphere, and you got the cabins, the forest paths, a few kills sprinkled in. But the back half, it turns into just like a long hallway where you're just getting Jason after Jason lunging at you. And at that point, it really loses the creativity for me, and it makes the house feel less dynamic. And that's my biggest issue, is instead of showing off Jason's iconic kills, the house really just leans on him kind of stalking you. There's not really any puppets or animatronics or crazy set pieces. It's just pure Jason overload. And while some people, especially diehard Friday the 13th fans, are going to love that, I walked away feeling a little bit underwhelmed. Now, credit where it's due, I did enjoy the movie references that are sprinkled throughout. As someone who's seen all the Friday the 13th movies, those nods made me smile. But overall, for me, this house sacrificed the variety and design in pursuit of just being the scariest. And that choice didn't fully work on me, especially since it wasn't the scariest. And moving on to number 8 is Five Nights at Freddy's. I was really excited for this house, not because I'm a huge Five Nights at Freddy's fan, but because a haunted animatronic house just sounds awesome. I think that I set my expectations a little too high, though, because it wasn't nearly as creepy or scary as I hoped it would be. That being said, if you're a fan of the movie, this house nails it. It honestly feels like you're stepping right into Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Universal spared no expense here. The sets, the puppets, the animatronics, everything looks incredible. The facade alone sets the tone with the neon sign that's stripped straight from the movie, and when you walk inside, all the animatronics are, on the stage singing their song. It's such a strong opening, and I really wish that I could have stayed in that room longer just to take it all in, because it was really awesome. The animatronics, they were made by the Jim Henson Creature Shop, so they're top quality. And as you go through, the house just keeps that authentic movie feel with more puppets and more animatronics, but again, not very scary. There really weren't very many human scare actors, and there's just only so much that you can do with these animatronics. So overall, It's definitely one of the coolest walkthrough attractions I've ever experienced. You can tell a lot of effort was put into this and just making it the best it could be. But if you're going in looking for scares, you might walk out a little bit disappointed. Personally, I think it would have been even stronger if they leaned more into the games than the movie, because the games, I think, have a lot more material that they could pull from that could cause some genuine scares. At number 7, I have Grave of Flesh, and this was kind of a hidden gem for me. It was a pretty underrated house. A lot of people are ranking this like dead last or close to it, but that's definitely not how I felt. The entrance set the tone right away with a really cool like graveyard facade, and then there's this like awesome effect where if you look up, you can see your tombstone, and it's just really cool. And from there, the house takes on this claustrophobic vibe, like you're being buried alive underground with creatures from the underworld just popping out at you. And I get the complaints. Some people feel like the rooms can feel a little bit tedious, and most scares are just the same. The characters look the same. But personally, I really like the design they went for with the characters. And plus, I think the tight, dirt-lined hallways created such a strong atmosphere that it really kept me distracted from any repetition that was there. One of my favorite moments was the fog room. Walking through it was without being able to see where the scare actors are just made me feel really anxious, which was awesome. It's a simple trick, but I thought it was really effective. To be fair, this house really doesn't have any like flashy set pieces or puppets or animatronics that some others do, but even with that, I still found myself enjoying it way more than I expected. Sometimes the overall vibe just clicks, and for me, Grave of Flesh was one of those houses. At number 6, I have Hatchet and Chains. Another house where the setting, I think, really carried it. A Western-themed haunted house is just a super cool concept, and I think Universal executed it very well. The scares were solid, though I didn't find myself jumping a whole lot. What stood out to me more were the sets and the effects. For example, there's a scene where a scare actor is sitting on a horse, and at first I thought it was a static figure, but when he lunged at me, it totally caught me off guard. It was a great moment. And I also am a super big sucker for like big puppets and big animatronics. So I love seeing like the giant demon head puppet and the dead horse animatronic, or like the chimney demon scene. The practical effects were awesome too, like the bullet holes in the wall with smoke puffing out, or the scene where the demon hand burst through the guy's mouth. Those touches really made the house stand out a lot. And if I had one gripe though, it would be the heavy use of blacklight paint on the demons. It felt a little unnecessary and honestly made it look a little bit cheaper. And I also wish that we had seen more of the Hatchet and Chains characters. The demons basically stole the spotlight, and that's fine, but I think the two of those characters could have added a lot more to this house. Overall, though, it was a great house. The setting was unique, the effects were creative, and the set pieces were just really memorable. It felt a little too short, but I think they made the most of the space that they had, and it ended up being one of the more fun houses of the year for me. At number 5, I have the Horrors of the Wyatt Six, and admittedly, I am a WWE fan. I love the Wyatt Six, so this house is right up my alley. I know a lot of people who aren't familiar with this property might not fully appreciate it, but for me, it was so cool to see this tribute to Bray Wyatt and his characters. And what made it really special was how well it encapsulated every era of Bray Wyatt. We got the Wyatt Six, the Fiend, the Firefly Funhouse, the Bayou. It really felt like we were spoiled as fans. Each character had their moment to shine, and they just fit this event perfectly. The costume designs alone feel like they were made for a haunted house. So while WWE might not sound like a traditional house at Halloween Horror Nights, I think it worked flawlessly. There were not a ton of big puppets or animatronics here either, but there were plenty of scare actors to keep the energy up. And if I had one complaint, it would be that some of the early kills were clearly mannequins. They looked a little cheap, but that kind of pulled me out of the immersion a little bit. But overall, I think this house is really underrated. Obviously, fans of Bray Wyatt and the WWE are going to get a lot more out of it. But even if you aren't a fan, there are still a lot of good scares and a lot of fun moments throughout. For me, it was just a really, really well made and fitting tribute to this beloved character. And number 4, kind of a shocker for a lot of people, I think, is Fallout. A lot of people are calling this the most disappointing house of the year, but I could not disagree more. Maybe I just got a really good run, but there was a lot here for me to like. For context, this house is one that you really need to be a fan of the show to fully appreciate. I don't care much for the games, but I do love the show, and this house leans heavily into that. It's basically a scene-by-scene walkthrough, almost like a book report version of the series. And on one hand, that's amazing as a fan because I got to see so many of my favorite moments recreated. But on the other hand, I totally get why some people might feel like this is a less creative approach. The biggest complaint, though, I've seen is the lack of scares, and that's honestly pretty fair. It's not the scariest house at the event by any means, but unlike Five Nights at Freddy's, I felt like there was enough to keep me satisfied here. What really sold me, though, were the set pieces, the atmosphere, and just the overall vibe. There were multiple wow moments for me in this house. It starts out with you walking into the vault with 50s music playing in the background, which is a perfect tone setter for the whole house. And then you get to see like the Ghoul, the Fallout Power Armor, the Gulper Puppet, which is essentially a giant radiated axolotl, and other Santa elements from the show. It all made me feel like I was inside of that world. And at the end of the day, I just had a blast with this one. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, especially if you don't enjoy the show, but for fans, it's a really good tribute with some unforgettable visuals. Now, when I get to my top three, these are all houses that I think are just a tier above everything else at this event. I could reasonably exchange all three of these houses with each other. They could go anywhere in these top three, but these three are definitely set as the top three. I just kind of vary on where to put them. But I'm going to go ahead and put El Artista at number three. I've heard a lot of people call this their number one house of the event, and it's not really hard to see why. This one could easily slide into my number one spot, just depending on the day. It's that good. From the moment you walk in, the quality immediately jumps out at you. The facade is absolutely stunning. Full-on mansion, and then inside, they really went all out with set pieces. At one point, you're literally walking through a courtyard in the middle of the house with a working fountain. It's just gorgeous. The setting and concept elevate it even more. It's basically like the Encanto Casita if it went completely evil, which is such a fun idea, I think. I loved all the creepy paintings throughout, and the variety of scares, I think, really kept things fresh and made it a great house from start to finish. One of the biggest highlights for me in this house was the gargoyle actor who literally flew over me on a zip line. That was such a unique scare and probably my biggest, well, probably second biggest wow moment of the whole event. And because I listened to the lore podcast for this house beforehand, I caught a lot of the references, which added an extra layer of immersion here. Overall, this house just felt perfectly balanced. They had some beautiful set pieces, creative scares, an awesome concept, and really strong execution from start to finish. Honestly, what more could you ask for in a house? Number two, I have Terrifier. This was probably the most fun house at the event. Art the Clown, yes, he's sadistic, but in a weird way, he's also kind of endearing, and that energy shines all the way throughout this house. It's also the most interactive house, I think. I had several direct interactions with different versions of art, and every single one elevated my experience. The scare actors absolutely nailed it, from costume design to mannerisms, literally everything. They really became art, and massive props to them for pulling that off, because that's not easy to do. And if you're a fan of the movies, this house is packed with references. I honestly feel like this is a love letter to the fans. The facade alone is literally the Terrifier funhouse, like straight up ripped from the movie. Inside, there were some really unique effects, like how they use mirrors, that I think were really clever and totally got me. This is also the longest house at the event, at least it felt like it, which I definitely appreciated. And it even included a branching path at the end with a wet path and a dry path. My group took the wet path. The hallway wasn't anything really special, but the payoff at the end was pretty awesome. They had Sienna holding Art's severed head, followed by his headless body honking a bicycle horn at us. Just a really fun finale. Overall, this house was just a blast. Not the scariest, unless gore really gets to you, but it's one of the more memorable and creative and fan-focused houses of the year. And at number one, the best house at this event for me was Gulkin Monsters of the North. A super big sleeper for me. Honestly, there's a few reasons I loved it, and that starts with the setting. Norse mythology mixed with horror is just right up my alley. So that definitely plays into why this one ranks this high for me. But it's not just the theme. The execution was also incredible. The set pieces were next level. The Wicker Man was super impressive, but the finale is what completely floored me. That massive animatronic beast that just is like welcoming you into its stomach. It was my single favorite moment from the event this year. And I love when animatronics are used like this. And this one was enormous. Plus, there were other really great ones sprinkled out throughout the house, like the werewolves, that kept this house really visually dynamic for me. And of course, it's still a haunted house, so scares are going to matter. And there was one particular scare that ended up being my biggest scare of the event. It wasn't anything like too groundbreaking or anything, but one of the actors inside the beast's belly hit me with a first scare, and that was whatever. It was I got scared, but then he doubled back for a second one, and I wasn't expecting that, and I screamed and nearly dropped to my knees. It was awesome and terrifying. I also thought that the scare actors in this house got a lot closer to me than they did in any other house. Maybe that's just the run I got, but that's how I felt. They were right in my face, which added an extra level of intensity. But overall, this was just an awesome house with jaw-dropping sets, great use of animatronics, and some of the most memorable scares of the event. Honestly, I think a lot of people are sleeping on this house, and they shouldn't be. But that's my list, guys. I really, really enjoyed this event. I'll definitely be going back. Like I said, it's my first one. So from the moment I walked in to the moment I walked out, I was floored. And I can't wait to go again next year. So yeah, please, again, like, comment, and subscribe, and enjoy going to this event if you ever get to go.